Hi, it's Ray. Welcome to the Ray Public, where I talk about films from the perspective of a filmmaker and film lover. So, this is my first Singapore International Film Festival, which, by the way, fun fact, is the only Academy Award qualifying festival in the region, as in Southeast Asia. I am very proud of that fact. I mention that fact quite a lot when I am overseas as a filmmaker. That is apparently not common knowledge here, so consider this me doing my part in spreading the message. I have been very fortunate to have been able to watch 6 feature films this year as part of the festival, and I will now proceed to tell you about them from starting from number 6. The rankings are kind of sort of completely arbitrary and entirely my opinion. They're all great in their own ways. Definitely check them out when they are in theaters. Disclaimer, it's a spoiler-free-ish review. I'm going to say things like, I didn't like the ending, which some people might consider a spoiler. So consider yourself warned. Other than that, I will be leaving out details about the film, so you can go check them out yourself, which you should, because they're good. So, number 6, Stranger Eyes by Yeo Siu-hwa, a film that is about a couple who loses their kid and then gets sent videos from their stalker who has been filming them in secret, obviously, because stalker. And the moments on the film aren't just about their everyday lives, it's also about very intimate moments. So that part's interesting. Frankly, very cool film. Love how they incorporated the surveillance footage and also shot it from angles from surveillance cameras, kind of blending in that, like, is it real? Is it not? What is happening? I am like spying on this character, but because that character is spying on that character. I loved it for the most part, minus the last 20 minutes. It's like, what on earth is happening in the last 20 minutes? I felt like the movie could have ended before the last 20 minutes, but that is not what happened. And that's why it's number 6. It's not because it's bad or anything. I liked the first 2 hours. I was gripped. I was hooked. And that is probably why I was so let down by the last 20 minutes, because I was like, where is this coming from? Number 5, Don't Cry Butterfly by Duong. It's a Vietnamese film set in early 2000s Hanoi about a woman whose husband cheats on her, and instead of just talking to her husband, she does a bunch of other things instead, such as changing the way she looks, going to pray a lot, and uses voodoo magic. It's undeniably a film about womanhood, not just in terms of the lead story, but also in terms of her daughter, who is about to leave Vietnam to pursue an education overseas, and she's kind of dealing with that, about leaving home and the changes in her lives. I had very high expectations for this movie going in. I saw it win the Grand Prize and Most Innovative Feature at Venice earlier this year, along with a string of other accolades it has collected along the way on its festival run. It's also Lin's first feature. Like, frankly, kudos, and I am in awe. I had expected very colorful visuals to go with the film, just based off the storyline and also the marketing from the poster of the film. So what I had not expected was the lean into surrealism. But did it come as a surprise? Not really, because the film has kind of been set up in such a way where you're like, okay, I'm ready. Take me. I'll go on this ride with you. Let's see where this goes. That suspension of disbelief wasn't hard for me, and I felt like that was great care taken to balance the realism versus surrealism in this film. My gripe with it, much like with Stranger Eyes, is the ending. However, with Stranger Eyes, it was so much so like, I don't feel like this last 20 minutes matches up with the rest of the film. In this case, it felt more like, this is how you're gonna leave me? I thought we were friends. I didn't like the way they ended, though one might argue that because I had such expectations, I was having such a good time, I didn't want it to end. But all good things must come to an end. And it did. And I didn't like that. I didn't like that that was how it ended. I just wasn't ready. Boo. Number 4. Also a Vietnamese film. Literally. It's called Vietnam by Truong Minh Ki. I hope I get the name right. I'm so sorry if I don't. It's about a pair of coal miners who love each other deeply, but can't do so openly because they're gay. And it's early 2000s in Vietnam. Vietnam kind of makes me feel the way the movie looks, which is black and blue. Kind of like a bruise that is healing. You run your thumb across it and you expect it to ache, but it does not. And the bruise heals. And you move on. And that's kind of how this movie makes me feel, which is, I feel also so unfair to kind of, because it feels dismissive of a movie that is so well woven together, from cinematography to sound to the acting. It's such a slow burn, gorgeous movie, but there's this deep undercurrent of sadness that runs throughout the movie in every aspect. And you would think a sad girly like me would definitely strongly relate to that. That's kind of not how I felt walking out of the theaters. So there's that. But perhaps again, very much depends on the frame of mind that I had that day. I am interested to revisit this movie and see if I feel any differently down the line. Number 3, Spirit World by Eric Khoo. Spirit World is a film about a French singer played by the inimitable Catherine Deneuve, who passes away after performing at a concert in Japan. That same week, one of her fans passes away as well, and they meet in limbo, by which I mean the space between life and death. They are still able to explore this world that we live in, but not really be a part of it because they're dead. The only gripe I have with this film, the one teeny weeny, smallest, most minute of gripes, and you're about to find out how fucking picky I am, is the one recurring musical motif that they kept using throughout the film. It was like that beat they had in Challengers that they kept reusing to build up tension, and it just grated on my nerves so much. It's just I know it's such a small thing. It's probably something that's probably only I picked up, but it really took me out of it. I didn't like it. And that is honestly my only gripe for what is otherwise, in my opinion, a perfect film. I love the story. I'm a huge sucker for anything related to death, and it was explored so beautifully in this film. It was gorgeously shot, breathtaking shot composition, and phenomenal performances from the entire cast. Such a small nitpick on my part, but that is why it's third instead of second for me. An Unfinished Film is a docu-release film about a filmmaker trying to finish, surprise, his unfinished film. He revisits some old footage from Once Upon a Time a decade ago and decides he's going to write a second act for the lead character that is in the film. He finds the lead actor again after 10 years, and they start shooting the second act of this movie 10 years later, in a hope to finish said unfinished film. However, as they started shooting, the pandemic hit and that interrupted the process. So, did he actually finish his film? What started off as a very fast-paced, behind-the-scenes look into the making of this movie then slowed down considerably to show the cast and crew in lockdown in the hotel that they were housed at for the duration of the shoot, and then were now stuck in because of the lockdown. Kind of like how life slowed down considerably during the pandemic. The film uses more and more footage shot from during that time, from just people's phones where, you see them being bored indoors and amusing themselves, to eventually being allowed outside for the first time in months. It's an example of such clever filmmaking and really made me wonder about the process. Like, he had this idea and then he went looking for the parts to execute the idea about an unfinished movie, or he had an unfinished movie and I kind of worked backwards from there to make this film. The documentary approach blurs the lines of reality and fiction even more within the film, such as him using actual vertical footage of people shooting videos of themselves indoors, videos of them seeing what's happening outside, such as guards like locking down the place. I don't know about you, but I watch this film and it just makes me go, I wish I was this clever. I wish I was this smart. It was so creative and clever, and yet there was absolutely nothing fancy about it. It's just a good idea with even better execution, because that's really what it is. And what it reminded me was that you don't need anything fancy to make a good film. All you need is a really good story, and a really good story comes from people. And that's what this film made me feel. It's the sort of film that reminds you how much can be done with the medium of cinema if you just have a good story to tell. Never mind the lights, the effects, the fancy costumes and sets. That's all great, but they're not necessary to make a good film. You just need a good story, and that's all you need. And the thing is, the film, despite it being about the pandemic, ended on a positive note. It ended on a hopeful note. I walked away from it with sort of renewed hope for the human race and the spirit of survival. Despite it being a pandemic film, I feel like this is one of those films that's going to end up in the historical archives because it's just really captured exactly the chaos of that period in time for the Chinese people. It's about how humans kind of like find ways to succeed and win against the circumstances. And finally, number one, Mongrel by Tsai Wei-liang. I love this movie. I aggressively love this movie. I was like, oh and wow. I love every second of it. Absolutely no nitpicks, no nothing. I fucking love this movie. I am so excited for more people to watch it. If you have a chance to watch this film in theaters, freaking go. It was an absolute masterclass in control and direction. Okay, first of all, it's not every day that I like a film that was shot in 4:3 because I usually prefer things wide because I'm like, show me more. But the choice for 4:3 is very deliberate, I feel, in this case because it emphasizes the intimacy for certain scenes. It's so good at only showing you what it wants to show you and therefore only showing you what you need to know in the moment. As a filmmaker, I feel like I learned so much just by watching this movie. Also, the movie has such a powerful first frame. It had me wondering throughout the entire movie how the director was going to end it. And it definitely wasn't a disappointment. It made a lot of sense. This is me trying to avoid spoilers. This is me trying to not give away anything. But I don't know if you can tell, but I was just like, fucking fantastic. I love it. There's also a scene that was argued to be controversial in the sense that apparently it was so shocking that there were people who walked out of theaters, not at the particular screening I was at, but for other screenings apparently. But even then, this scene that one could argue was in the movie for shock value isn't even that shocking, in my opinion. It made perfect narrative sense. Yeah, I can't say anymore without spoiling. Also, pardon a very small fangirl moment, but I adored One Love's. I adored the leading man's performance in this entire movie. Frankly, when I looked at the stills from the programs real quick, I was like, oh, this film looks interesting, but I didn't think much about it until I had the privilege of meeting One Love in person, and I was like, what a beautiful, charismatic man. Like to see him in action, to see him move, both in person and also on screen, is like his performance in this film was fucking phenomenal. Like, yeah, it was great. Like so much screen presence, that charisma. Oh god, like you cannot take your eyes off him. Like, it's not every day I rave about an actor like this, but I will rave about this one. Like Mongrel, my favorite thing that has happened to me at the festival. There you have it, the 6 films that I have watched at the Singapore International Film Festival this year. What a privilege and what a homecoming for me, really, having not been around for the last 10 years. But yeah, I hope you enjoyed this. I hope you like it. I hope you go to the festival next year. And in the meantime, see you at the Republic.